Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and last time I did one of these I waited quite a while to put it up, but today I thought I would put it up because anytime I make a new random sheet for my Macs or adjust it, people kind of want to know what's going on. They want to understand what I'm doing, what the logic is, and people need to understand to a certain extent these things can be random. Okay, they can be random, but they don't have to be. So let's come over and talk about what we're doing. As you guys see, I have 4 columns, and for those who don't understand, I run the conjugate system. I have 2 max effort days every week. We do not want to repeat the same lift unless we PR on it. Now, before people jump in and say that doesn't work, that can't work, you guys have watched me make it work. You see tons of lifters make it work. You guys have watched me get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. You've watched me PR all my big lifts multiple times. Okay? It obviously works. When I go back to the classic lifts, are always stronger. So to understand what I'm doing, I have 3 different lower body basic exercises listed in 1 upper body. They're all bench press for the variation on the upper body because I have a max effort bench press day. So let's discuss that, then we'll go into the way I rotate my 3 lower body lifts. So what I do on Monday when I get up to get ready to bench press, I use a random number generator. You can find plenty of them online. Right now for this chart, I pick a number between 1 and 15. I let it select it for me, and I do whatever the lift is. Now, there is a heavy bias towards accommodating resistance and partials here, but some of these are not. Some of them are more difficult, particularly the dead pin bench and the buffalo bar, which, if you guys recall, a couple weeks ago, I hit a buffalo bar bench press with straight weight, no bands, no chains. I got 352 pounds, which is a PR. Okay, so we know my bench has gone up because the buffalo bar is actually more difficult than a standard bench, right? It's actually slightly more difficult. It could be the same, but it's never going to be worse. It's never going to be better. It's always going to be equal or worse than your main bench because the range of motion is increased at the bottom. What I've decided to do, rather than get a lot of variation on this, because I had the potential for up to 50, I narrowed it down and said, look, I need to have a pretty heavy bias towards accommodating resistance. So I've got 15 lifts here. 6 of them are accommodating resistance. Now, those percentages of chains or bands, that's percentage of my max. So my max, if we just called it 350 right now, if I get 10%, we're going to do 35 pounds of band or chain. 20% would be 70 pounds, so on and so forth. Right? It's percentages of 1 rep max. Everything that I do is based off 1 rep max percentages off of a classic lift of some type. Okay, so it doesn't matter what my 5 board press is. We care what my rough bench press is, and that's what we use for the percentages. Okay, and that's how it operates. So if you look through the thing, I've got 3 different variations of chains, 3 different variations of bands. Okay, they're all varying. That's 6 different lifts where I can use a straight bar. Outside of that, I'm not going to use bands or chains on the other bars. I have other bars I can use. Now, some people are like, why not the football bar? I just don't feel like using it. I want to stick with stuff that I feel like is a better approximation of my bench strength. I'll save that bar for when I need to do certain amounts of volume pressing and be easy on my shoulders. I feel like my shoulders are doing pretty well now at this point. I know what I'm doing with them, know what my weak points are. I'm not as worried about that pronated grip, and quite frankly, I just don't care these days. I could work it back in if I wanted to. But the buffalo bar lets me go to a slightly deeper range of motion. It's more difficult. The cambered bar, I can do close grip benching on, since I'm only close grip benching these days, no wide grip. Not really an issue there either, right? We can use the cambered bar because it will be close grip due to the nature of it. It's my cambered squat bar. You guys see me do other lifts with, right? I do good mornings and squats with it. And it destabilizes you. It's a slightly unstable bar, particularly at the bottom. So it will teach me to stay tight and see where I'm at when I do that. The dead pin bench, which you guys know I've done before, you've seen me do it. I like the dead pin benching because it's a very, very valuable tool for finding your leverages. This is the most difficult lift on here. I'm going to have the weakest weight on that out of anything on this chart. Then because I have all those bench blocks, I can do boards from half board and then all the way up to 5 board increments. So I've given myself 6 different heights of board presses. This is very heavily biased towards lockout testing. Okay? Only 3 lifts aren't out of the 15. Why? Because that's my weak link these days, right? That is where I'm weakest, is at my lockout. We've seen it, we've watched it, we know I am very powerful off the chest. I'm going to continue to be because the speed work seems to be helping me there. I'm doing dips and things. And I'm having a heavy bias towards triceps in my overall training. My triceps are my weakest link. They need work. And so this stuff will let me test maxes that really test lockout strength slightly more than off the chest. But I will randomly get lifts that test pretty much entirely off the chest. Although keep in mind that half board, the one board, and the lighter bands and chains, they're going to be very, very close approximations too. Those are going to be extremely close testers for my raw bench. Now, people say, where's the floor press? I just don't feel like having it in right now. I just don't feel like having it in. These are all better testers for me for benching. My bench needs the most work. I'm not as concerned with general strength on the bench compared to some of my other big lifts. I'm just not. I need more bench strength. It is my weakest lift out of all my big 3. Therefore, I'm going to use a little more specificity on it with these. Then we come over to the squat. Okay, every week I'm rotating. So I'm running 3-week waves of max work for lower body maxes. I do a squat, a deadlift, then a good morning. Okay, so it's a squat, a deadlift, and a good morning, repeated in 3-week waves. So for the squat, or each of these, I only have 6 exercises. Well, that gives me up to 18 exercises. I can technically go 18 weeks without repeating the same lift. I don't need a lot of variation on the box squatting. I'm not worried about bands these days. I'm just going to do chains. I'm doing bands for all my speed work. All my speed work is with bands. I don't care about it a whole lot here. I like it for the benching. I don't see a significant difference when I use bands versus chains for my squats. So I only care about seeing where my straight weight is and then accommodating resistance so that I have some variation. I'm picking the bars that are easiest on my shoulders. I can always work a straight bar in. If I want to get a good idea of where my back squat is, I can always just throw a normal bar on and test a back squat. Or I could just come in and test a back squat if I want. Okay? Not a big deal. I can do that at random, anytime I feel like. But I have 6 basic squats. This gives me a good amount of variation because these 2 bars are very, very, very different. So each of my 2 different box squat variations is a very, very different strength curve and balancing. And then each one can be done with straight weight, light chains, and heavy chains. Gives me 6 quite different lifts to test my squat on. And it lets me be more consistent. I don't need so many different variations that I can't pin down where my squat is. These I can look at and I can estimate very, very easily where my squat is at any given time. It gives me enough variation. I'm not worried. And because I only squat every 6 weeks, like I could literally, if I thought I could PR every 12 weeks on the same lift, well, I only have to repeat one other lift in between. Not a big deal. Deadlifts, kind of the same thing. People are like, oh, there's no sumo. No, because I'm doing my speed work sumo. That is carrying my speed work. And I do some volume with conventional variations. But I want to just work on conventional. I'm stronger at conventional. This is a better test of my deadlift strength. And since I'm doing all the volume or the speed work on sumo, that's covering my sumo training. I just want to know what I can deadlift. But I need things that aren't going to bury me. I'm not going to have a psychological attachment to. When I'm ready to PR on the deadlift, I can walk in and PR a normal deadlift at any time. This gives me 6 different deadlifts. I have 3 chain variations to kind of see where I'm at with lockouts. 3 different deficit variations. These deficits tell me exactly where my deadlift is, by the way. Okay, the deficit work, anytime I get one of those, I'll be able to look at that and approximate my deadlift off of that very easily because I know what my ratios look like. Okay, we know it from the past. Then we come over, good morning, same thing. I don't have a lot of variation there. I have the normal bar and I have the cambered bar. I like to do cambered bar with chains for my rep work these days, or just straight cambered bar. But the normal bar gives me, again, enough variations of good mornings that we don't hit the same lifts and we can test it in true conjugate manner. But they're all fairly consistent. Okay, they're going to be very consistent. These are bars I'm comfortable with on the movement, which I don't want to get ones I'm not comfortable with. I don't want to risk anything going wrong. I don't want to risk anything with bands. This is a lift that I want to get really brutally strong on and be able to max on and have really good maxes for reasons I've discussed. But I need to be very, very careful in which variations I do. I don't want to do anything that's going to be too risky because it's too new to me. Okay, I'm used to both of these bars on it. Chains gives me only dealing with accommodation without worrying about speed on it. Right, I don't want to have to outrun the bands on a movement like this right now. Again, this is how we avoid getting hurt while maxing on it. Be very selective in what variations we do. Look at the variations that are going to give us the lowest risk of injury, but we'll still test what we need to test and still have enough variation that we avoid overuse. So this is what I'm doing, and basically this gives me 15 upper body lifts, 18 lower body lifts. I can go up to, in theory, 15 weeks without repeating anything, and 15 weeks without hitting the exact classic variation, and then 18 weeks on the lower body. Okay, this is plenty for variation. This is a lot of variation. I think this is more than adequate for where I'm at these days, and it lets me do it all randomly without having to think ahead of time or worry about what I'm going to do. I can just walk in and do it. Alright guys, well that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.